You're joining us from Zoom or via YouTube. We are so excited to have you here with us. And as folks are coming, we'd love to get to know you. So if you're joining us on Zoom, please drop your name, your organization, and where you're joining from in the chat. We're very excited to have you here. Don't hesitate. Please join in. Amazing. Hi, Hannah. Hi, Ashish. Hi, Daniel, Hunter. Nice to see you again. Welcome, welcome. Before we jump in and get into the details of this amazing panel that is waiting us, a quick note to say we have live interpretation available for those of you joining on Zoom. So you can hear me and our panelists not only in English, but you have the option of French, Spanish, and Portuguese. So how do you access the translation? You can access the live interpretation by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen, right next to the Q&A button that you see there. And then you can select your preferred language. Please make sure that if you want to watch in English, you still have to do this step and select English, as some of the panel's original language will not be in English. So whether you're speaking French, Spanish, Portuguese, and English, we have you covered. Just make sure you join the right rooms. We want you to feel included, so please choose a language that works best for you. I'm going to repeat it for some of our non-English speakers. So let me say it in French once, and my colleague Dave will say the same message in Spanish and Portuguese. Bonjour les francophones et bienvenue. Avant de commencer, si vous êtes plus à l'aise en français, il n'y a pas de souci. Il y a une traduction qui est directement disponible sur Zoom. Pour activer la traduction, cliquez sur le petit globe tout en bas de votre écran, juste à côté de Q&A section, et choisissez votre langue français, évidemment. Merci. Day, would you like to tell our Spanish and Portuguese speakers how they can access the live translation?
Oi, pessoal. Falando diretamente aqui do Renovando Nossa Energia. So I'm speaking here directly from Renew Our Power. As instruções para interpretação em português, caso você esteja se juntando a nós agora, tem um globo aqui embaixo nos controles do Zoom. É só clicar no globinho da interpretação, escolher o idioma português. A gente vai ter painelistas falando em vários idiomas, então é bem importante você escolher o idioma ali para você conseguir entender. Ahora para los hispanohablantes, hola, bienvenidos. Tenemos interpretación en español para esta sesión. Por favor, es solo clicar en el globo aquí abajo, seleccionar español como idioma. Tenemos hoy panelistas en inglés y portugués, entonces, por favor, seleccionar español para acceder a la interpretación. Yeah, and thank you. The panel will start soon. Thank you so much. And we are really happy to welcome you to join us from all around the world.
Thank you, Jay. I see here there are people really from all around the world. We have Mike here from UK, Ken from Ann Arbor in Michigan, Ezekiel from DRC, Mateus from Benin, Tassia from Brazil. So very, very excited to have everybody on board. Please don't hesitate to write your name in the chat, say a quick hello to us while we wait for folks to join in and the panel to start. Again, for those of you who are just joining, a big welcome from us at 3:50 to the live streaming of the opening panel of the Renew Our Gathering, which is happening right now in Brazil. Today is our first session, our opening panel titled Just Decentralized Energy as Resistance. And we'll see you here on Zoom. If you're watching on YouTube, a big hello to you as well. Again, a quick repetition for folks who are coming in now. Please make sure you have your translation turned on. You have a globe icon right under your screen, under the speakers. If you speak English, select English as your language. If you speak French, select French, Spanish, and Portuguese. But please do that because some of the panels will be in different languages. So please make sure that you have this language on that you feel the most comfortable in. All right. Very happy to see so many people here. There's a quick question. When will this end? The panel lasts for an hour and a half, and it should start shortly, maybe in the next 5 to 10 minutes. So we'll be with each other for an hour and a half to 1 hour, 45 minutes. All right, cool. Very quickly, before the panel starts, here are a few reminders, mostly for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, so that things can run smoothly. So if you're wondering why we can't hear you or see you, that's by default. Your mic and camera are off by default because we're expecting a lot of people to join in. But the chat is open for now, so come say hi to us. We want to see you. We want to hear from you. We'll also be closing the chat when the panel begins so that we all can focus fully on the panels, but we'll open the chat again to say goodbye, hear how the panels were for you. Please also note that this call, including the chat, is also being recorded, just so that those of you who missed out can fully immerse themselves in the experience and know what's going on in the panels and hear from you as well. This webinar is also being broadcasted to YouTube. If you have a question for our panelists, don't worry if you can't use the chat. If you're joining us on Zoom, you have the Q&A feature right next to the globe you clicked, and you can drop in your questions or comments. And if we have time, Day, my colleague who's on the ground, will also be asking some of the panelists directly a question or two that she selects from the mix that you send in. So please do be active on the Q&A function and send in as many questions as you like. All right, I'm just being informed by my colleague that the panel is starting. Day, how is it looking? Are we ready to go live with the panel?
Yeah, starting here.
Great. So let's go ahead and cut to the panel. And thanks everyone for joining in. Stay tuned.
Energy. Last year at COP29 in Baku, over 130 countries pledged to triple energy, renewable energy capacity and double energy efficiency by 2030. Also last year, 15% of the world's electricity came from solar and wind power. Also last year, solar energy growth was over 30%, the highest growth since 2017. And also last year, 96% of the new added capacity of renewable energy in the entire world came from these two sources. I think it's clear that the energy transition is happening, but this energy transition, it's not being just, and that is a huge problem, that's a huge issue, and we also know that fossil fuels are continuing to be expanded in many parts of the world, in our communities, in our lands, causing terrible damage. So today, in this panel, we want to show that energy transition rooted in justice is definitely possible. And that's why we have here 5 amazing panelists that will tell us their stories. And well, I think it's enough of me speaking. Now I would like really to pass the word for our panelists. Each of them will have now the opportunity to introduce themselves, and then we will start with some questions. So we can start in this order. Maria, se puder, por favor, se apresentar, e depois a gente vai passando. We will pass the mic for each of you to introduce yourself. You bring the mic back to me, and I will start the questions. Então, pode se apresentar e passar o microfone para a Irene, por favor.
Olá, bom dia a todos e todas. Eu sou Maria Cunha, sou do município chamado Carauari, no interior do Amazonas, a 790 quilômetros da capital Manaus. Eu sou ativista socioambiental de um movimento chamado Movimento Social do Território Médio Juruá. É um movimento que atua em defesa das comunidades e povos tradicionais, trabalhando em iniciativas e buscando políticas públicas para quem cuida da floresta, né, que são os povos e comunidades que moram debaixo da copa das árvores. E entrei em movimento social desde os 15 anos, cresci apaixonada pela luta de Chico Mendes, é uma inspiração que eu tenho para me promover dentro desses movimentos. Entendo que militar essas bandeiras de luta pela conservação da biodiversidade, para incluir as mulheres e a juventude dentro desses contextos, é um caminho viável para a gente conseguir estratégias para a gente alcançar resultados promissores para o futuro contra as mudanças climáticas, tanto nos nossos territórios, municípios, como no planeta como um todo. Então, estamos por aqui, esperamos ter um bom diálogo e troca de experiências com vocês. Obrigada.
Hi, everyone. What do we want? What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? Okay, I love the energy in the room. My name is Irene Tonjire. I come from Uganda. I'm a community organizer and mobilizer. I'm the co-founder and executive director, Women for Green Economy Movement Uganda. It's a community-based organization that deals in empowering marginalized women, specifically women that are affected by the East African crude oil pipeline, and the youth and the young girls, on how we can empower them to raise their voices, to stand up on their own rights, to stand up and speak on what are the grievances that this pipeline has really caused, not only environmental injustices, but also human rights violations. And I'll be glad sharing my story on this panel. And thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Tansequakia, Neomelina Miowapin Labocam Masmo Nianihiao, Kinaskumtanawao. That's my language for where I'm from. I'm Nihiao. I'm born in the far, far north of so-called Canada. It's Treaty 8 territory. Our nation signed treaty well over 100 years when settlers came to colonize. And I'm born in a small community. And I come from a community that is completely surrounded by oil, gas, tar sands, fracking, and logging. And so my community has been trying to stop the exploitation and encroachment since before I was born. But the first time I was on a blockade was when I was 7 in 1988. And so that was 37 years ago, and our people are still fighting. And we are still experiencing immense types of impact, like elevated rates of cancer and just immunocompromise. So I've worked in toxic zones for over a decade as a climate and energy campaigner. So I'm actually my immunity is really low. So if you ever see me wearing a mask or just kind of coming back, that's why. And I think our movement spaces need to get a little bit better around disability justice and what disability justice means with climate justice. And so I'll just say that now, just for the immunocompromised people in this room, it's a very serious thing. And when we talk about environmental racism, that's a big issue as well. And that's very much linked to the way our bodies start breaking down when we're from contaminated areas and toxic zones, like myself and my community and many other Indigenous peoples that I work with. I have worked for 25 years on climate and energy and social justice and Indigenous rights, and started two Indigenous environmental organizations, one called co-founded Indigenous Climate Action, which is across the North and so-called Canada and works on international issues as well as local issues. And I also founded Sacred Earth, which is here today and a partner of 350.org. So we're very, very happy to be here. There's 2 staff in the front, so look out for us. We'll be working on some policy and another workshop for implementation, and we've implemented different projects across Turtle Island, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but I just wanted to say hi. Thank you very much.
Bulavinaka, my name is Alisi Rambukawanga. I am from Fiji. And in our language, when we greet, we say Bulavinaka. And in response, you say Bulavinaka back. Bulavinaka. Wonderful. So now when you leave ROP, you've learned 2 words from Fiji. Bula meaning health, and Vinaka is good. So when we say it, we wish you good health, we wish you life, and we speak blessings upon you. I'm from Fiji, to one of the main islands, Vanua Levu. My province, Bua, is one of the smallest provinces in our country. But how I started in social justice movement started from my province. We started off as any youth group that loved to socialize and mingle. We were in university, and the joke was, let's make sure we get all of the people from our province to know each other first, because Fiji is such a small place. You would need to know everyone from where you're from. However, as that began, we started to realize there were a lot of injustices that were happening in our country and in our province. And for us, the biggest one was extraction and mining. But in that space as well, I found myself amongst these people called the Pacific Climate Warriors. But when we started, I think this was back in 2013, we were really trying to figure out how we, as young people who saw ourselves as people with solutions that could be a useful and important part of climate justice, were being portrayed as victims in the global space. Our leaders were viewed as those who are going to ask for handouts, putting their hands out with this woe is me sort of narrative. We need help, we're so fragile, we're so vulnerable. But we did not feel that way. We felt that we were playing into a story that would get us help, but it did not help us, because the ways and the forms in which the help came further oppressed us. And it brought us to this place where we came up with this mantra: we're not drowning, we're fighting. We're warriors, we can build, we can fight. And we started to connect with young people across the Pacific who were doing the same work. And it's been such a beautiful experience for over the last decade or so, showing up into different spaces, whether it's the UNFCCC, where we're in the corridors, we're fighting, where we're trying to engage with our leaders in the negotiations, or even across the Pacific and in our communities. And it's gotten to this point where we've realized that we have been fighting and talking about that fight and saying that we're warriors, but now we've come to the stage where the solutions are before us. Renewable energy solutions. And we have also started to evolve with that from these warriors who are also world builders, who have the tools to fight, but the tools to also build a new place for us. And one of the things I had shared with my panelists last night was that we are in this space where we are trying to figure out how renewable energy works in our small countries that's so vast and so isolated from everywhere else. And I will share our stories, but I'm also very excited to hear and learn from how all these other regions and continents have done their work. And I thank you for allowing me to be in this space with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Namaskar, everyone, and hi to everybody. I'm so excited to speak you in front of you all. So it is my first time. I'm quite nervous, but I'll try my best I'll try to give you the best. So I'm Pavita Sai from Nepal, and I'm belonging from Uplander indigenous community from the mountain area of Nepal. So I'm also working in the organization called PowerShift Nepal. It is a human-led organization in Nepal that works for combating climate change and other environmental issues. Besides that, we also work on the intersectional of gender justice. While talking about me, I heard from all of my panelist friends. I heard in this journey, I started my journey as a climate activist from 2019 as a volunteer, and while I was working in the climate sectors, I realized how my community is facing the climate injustice and energy injustice in this reality. So these things took me in the journey of climate justice and energy justice, and currently I'm working in the gender justice as well, not only being the voice of the grassroots community, but also being the change of their voices to create the change and also lead the change. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That was a great start. And now we'll start with some questions. The first one, Maria, a primeira pergunta vou fazer para você. E eu gostaria que você compartilhasse aqui um pouco para nós a relação da sua comunidade com um peixe tão importante para a Amazônia, como é o pirarucu, que você pudesse contar para o pessoal um pouco, e como esse peixe, né, ou o manejo desse peixe acabou resultando em uma transformação energética para a comunidade de São Raimundo.
Quem conhece pirarucu? Levanta a mão. Gigante, né? O pirarucu, ele é uma espécie de empoderamento lá no meu território. Por quê? A gente trabalha com várias cadeias produtivas na região. São produtos da natureza agregado valor financeiro com sustentabilidade, né? E isso traz renda para as comunidades ribeirinhas, traz empoderamento para as mulheres, traz autonomia para a juventude, para as mulheres, para as famílias. E a cadeia produtiva do pirarucu, ela veio com esse peso bem maior, no sentido de trazer oportunidades, né? É uma cadeia que teve início na minha comunidade. Eu sou mulher ribeirinha, de comunidade tradicional, moradora. O primeiro manejo experimental da cadeia do pirarucu no território Mediroá foi em São Raimundo, que é a minha comunidade, e foi uma experiência assim que causou muito medo. Tipo, será que vai dar certo? O que a gente pode esperar disso? Quais são as estratégias que a gente pode traçar para que nada dê errado? Então, foi uma experiência incrível, trouxe um retorno muito significativo. Hoje, o território Mediroá, no município de Carauari, é um dos maiores produtores do pescado do pirarucu manejado, e a gente já vem trabalhando projetos incríveis através da ASPROC, que é a Associação dos Produtores Rurais de Carauari, que coordena o manejo do pirarucu na região. E, olhando para o meio das possibilidades que essa cadeia poderia trazer, a minha comunidade se reuniu, são 43 famílias, e decidiu que queria mudar a realidade local que a gente vivia. Por exemplo, a gente vivia com a energia de um motor gerador apenas por 3 horas da noite. Funcionava o motor às 6 da tarde, 8 horas da noite, 8h30, às vezes já tinha que apagar porque o nosso combustível estava pouco. E o valor do combustível, o diesel que a gente usava, era absurdamente caro. Então, a gente passava muito tempo sem energia. Não tinha como estudar, não tinha como ver TV, não tinha entretenimento. E, às vezes, a falta de entretenimento dentro de uma comunidade tradicional acaba levando a juventude e muitas outras pessoas para a cidade e traçando caminhos muito negativos. O retorno é sempre negativo para as famílias que ficam. E, pensando nisso, a gente pensou na estratégia de fazer um manejo de pirarucu para comprar um sistema solar que atendesse toda a energia da comunidade. E com o esforço das famílias, o apoio das organizações de base comunitária lá dentro do território, a gente conseguiu adquirir um sistema solar com 84 placas solares que atendem 43 famílias com energia que passou de 3 para 18 horas. Então, a gente consegue ter energia 18 horas, sustentando a TV, a geladeira, o freezer, a internet. Todas as casas passaram a comprar Starlink, que foi uma febre, né? Chegando no Brasil e adentrando esses territórios. Tivemos a preocupação do que essa internet 24 horas poderia trazer de negativo para dentro da nossa comunidade. Quais seriam os caminhos que a gente poderia trabalhar para que isso não afetasse a nossa cultura local. E hoje São Raimundo é uma das comunidades que deu exemplo a esse formato de energia, e hoje a gente já tem várias comunidades dentro do território que aderiram à ideia. Então, são diversas comunidades que são sustentadas através da energia solar, que fizeram em consórcio com famílias próximas, com amigos, ou em formato comunitário, como foi o que a gente aderiu. Hoje é uma realidade totalmente diferente. Eu faço faculdade dentro da minha casa, no meio da floresta, dentro da comunidade tradicional, porque tenho acesso à energia limpa, sustentável e tenho internet de qualidade. Então, tudo isso foi possível, todas essas conquistas vieram através da cadeia produtiva do manejo do pirarucu, que possibilitou essas oportunidades. É um recurso que traz empoderamento para as famílias, que trouxe empoderamento para as mulheres, que deu autonomia para as mulheres. A cadeia produtiva do pirarucu ela é mais dominada pelas mulheres do que pelos homens, no sentido de ser as mãos que conseguem visualizar quais são os pontos fracos, são as mãos femininas que conseguem visualizar as estratégias melhores de conduzir as coisas, que conseguem ter a percepção do que é mais viável, né? Então, o pirarucu, ele é um peixe, a gente chama lá no meu território que o pirarucu é um peixe do empoderamento, assim, ele trouxe oportunidades e caminhos que a gente achava em algum momento da nossa vida que era impossível de alcançar. E hoje ele é uma das cadeias mais potentes e que atende diversas famílias do município de Caruarí e de outros municípios que também já aderiram ao manejo sustentável.
Thank you, Maria. I think that's an amazing and an inspiring story. Thanks for bringing to us. And well, you spoke a lot about the empowerment and the role of women in this project, how important was the role of women in all of this. And with that, I would like to pass to our next panelist, Irene from Uganda, that is the lead of organization that's empowering women in order to achieve affordable, clean energy. So, Irene, I would like to for you to tell us about how you are empowering women in East Africa to lead this work for to bring affordable and clean energy in the area.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, in the room, who have ever heard about ECOP? Does anyone know about ECOP? Very few people. Okay, ECOP is the East African crude oil pipeline. It is the longest heated oil pipeline that is from Uganda to Tanzania. It's almost 1,443 kilometers, and it has displaced over 30,000 households, still counting. And our organization, Uganda discovered oil long time ago, almost 2006. but the communities and the government leaders and other oil companies were not, that time they were not really into discovery or into getting that oil. So it proceeded up to 2016 when they've really gotten the energy and the power and to start the extraction. It's when all these grievances, the little compensation, the violation of rights, both environmental and land rights and human rights came into, and communities start to suffer the consequences. We all know that when the country has natural resources, these resources are for the communities, right? But then you find that the resource, the oil and gas discovery in Uganda, and it's not for the community, rather it's for the government and oil companies. So you find that they are actually preferring profit over people. And you know what it means? The injustices that communities are going through because of the oil extraction. So as an organization, I've worked in this organization for 5 years. So it is just a young organization because we set this organization immediately after COVID-19, seeing how marginalized women were suffering, girls and youth did not have the space to speak on their own. So immediately after my bachelor's at campus, it's when I formed a group of women to come together to form a movement that will create a safe, open space for each and every woman, girl, or boy to speak freely on what are these fossil fuels impacting, or how are they impacting them, both at individual level and at family level and at a community level. So that's the background of why we started this. We wanted to create women, or to empower women, girls and youth to speak up on their own, to know their environmental and land rights. You know, when you know your rights, you are able to fight, you are able to win, other than living in denial. So that's how we've really managed or to come up. So how is my organization actually empowering women is that as I said, the grievances of oil and gas started a long time. So we found out that communities have already suffered the injustices of little compensation, displacement, early marriages, gender-based violence, all those challenges. We found out that communities are already going through. But immediately in 2021, it's when we put on a new armor, a new mantle to go and fight for our rights in the communities. And since 2021, we've actually recognized the achievements that communities are now in position to speak on their own. They are now in position to hold the government, the oil companies, the Total Energies, CNOOC, the government officials accountable for the grievances or for the challenges they are facing because of this East African crude oil pipeline. In my opinion, how I found the community by then is not how the communities are living now. So that is an achievement in our advocacy. I credit myself for that. And yeah. And again, how we are also trying to empower, or how we are empowering them, is we create open and safe space for them. We know that most of these climate crises, the injustices, they actually affect the psychological part of ourselves, of our lives, but we majorly focus on the outside. So how can we ensure that these marginalized communities are actually, they are in well position to hold the government accountable? And through that, we've managed to empower them to tell their own stories, the stories of themselves, the stories of their community, and the stories of the country at large. Through this, we use meditation as one way of communities to use, to think, to rebuild new power, to empower them, to empower the communities, to empower the families at large. And we also empower them to use the idea of coming together, sharing their own experience. Like I have said, different districts, different communities have been affected by this East African crude oil pipeline. So what we do is we create space storytelling or storytelling experience. They share their own stories from different regions, from different districts, to know that, yes, I'm not the only one. I have my colleagues. And yes, the future is bright. We can fight, we can win, and we shall really win before the government. Because right now we are having cases going on. The PAPs, the project affected persons, are suing the government, suing the oil companies because of the injustices that they have faced because of this. And it is an achievement seeing a marginalized community with confidence suing the government. It's an achievement. And we have really made sure that we create that energy, we create that space into them. And we make sure that we build their capacity amidst the shrinking civic space. I think you have heard about arrests of the activists in Uganda who are trying or who are against the East African crude oil pipeline. It is a lot. The violation, activists being arrested, abductions, but amidst all those threats, challenges, our communities are still resilient. They are still eager to fight harder to make sure that their grievances are being addressed and heard by the government. And another thing we are doing, we are empowering them to use media. You know, media is a very big tool for each and every advocacy material, or any activist who uses media has really, really won a great achievement. So we make sure that our communities are empowered through the use of media and through the use of storytelling for that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you for that. Before I go to Melina, I just wanted to, we have thousands of people watching us online as well. So there is an ask for accessibility coming from the online audience for all of the speakers to use the microphone like this, so people can read our lips instead of like this. So yeah, that was it. And now we can move to Melina. Well, we heard now from Irene terrible impacts from the fossil fuel industry in East Africa, and Melina and her community, her ancestors, also come from an area in so-called Canada facing some terrible impacts from the fossil fuel industry. So I wanted to ask you, Melina, how being like growing in an area like this help you to decide to pioneer community-led renewable energy and try to transform the lives from these communities impacted by this industry?
I actually decided to start building what I wanted to see in my community because of an oil spill. My community was just, as we say, the crow flies, but a number of kilometers away from one of the biggest oil spills in Alberta and Canada's history. And oh yeah, I think you have to turn that on. Oh, I think yes. And I came home to my family not being able to breathe, not being able to be in school. They had to shut down the community school for weeks. My auntie, who teaches our language in the community school, texted me and said, what it is. Hello. Hi. My auntie, who teaches our language in Nihiao in our school, she's taught for 40 years our language in our school, in the community school, texted me and she says, we're so sick, we can't function. No one's telling us what's happening. Can you tell us what's happening? Can you find out? Because at that point, I had already been working as a climate and energy campaigner for Greenpeace Canada for years and had kind of went across the country and internationally down south, trying to tell everyone about the tar sands because nobody knew about what it was. About 15 years ago, they said, oh, you work on tar sands in Jane, the movie, like tar sands? Like they actually thought it was just a movie. So even the term wasn't really well known at that time. So I talked to anybody that would listen, testified in US Congress, would talk to the UK Parliament, talk to investors to divest from what was happening in all the oil companies that we could talk to, go to all the AGMs, Shell AGM, BP AGM, Stat Oil AGM, all and talking to the investors, bringing them, touring them, showing this is what's happening. That's not what's happening in your fucking portfolios. Divest. So I did that for years. And when I came home and I realized how much I could talk and it didn't matter what I did, my family still couldn't fucking breathe. So that for me was, excuse my French, that's what we say in, sorry for swearing, but it's really, I couldn't breathe. Like I was going to the point where I was like, what am I doing with my life? It doesn't matter, you know? And so I said, that's it. I'm sick of talking about solutions, but the solutions are out there for someone else, not for us. Why not us? There was no Indigenous communities in so-called Canada, especially where I was from, that had any solar, anything. It was a thing, you know? So when we started building the first project, my auntie, who's, you know, she went to the residential schools. We have these schools where for 100 years, they took away kids. They took away all my aunts, all my uncles. They stole them from our community with Indian agents, and it was illegal to resist for 100 years. And so they hid my dad. He was the youngest. And so we're dealing with, you know, a lot of trauma. And so a lot of people sometimes were beaten so bad that they didn't want to speak out. And so they hid my dad, even though it was illegal, even though my grandparents would have been arrested and jailed. They hid him in the bush because we were trappers and we went out into the trap line for a long time. My cook and my grandparents lived off the land. So one of my older aunties who went to these residential schools said, you know, I never thought I would see these panels. I've only seen them on TV. And so that for me was something where I wanted to bring that into our community. I wanted the kids to see that this was possible, that we were able to build something without any foreign imposition, because there was so much foreign imposition of every oil company you can think of in the world is in the tar sands. And there were so many companies coming in trying to push and force, and the provincial governments and the federal government would give leases to our land. And so that's why you see so many Indigenous peoples in so-called Canada still fighting, because they try to legalize it, but it's literally illegal. Many nations have never signed and agreed to these things. And that's why you see our people being criminalized till this day. And so we decided to build, and I wanted to build. And that was the first project I built, was actually 2015, 10 years ago. And then since then, it was really exciting. It was actually the first time I ever cried tears of joy. I didn't think that for Indigenous peoples that existed, just joking. But I was like, I literally was like solar panels in our community, and I was received them, had ordered them, brought them up to the reserve, and then opened the box and was sitting there with a youth that we were training to put up the panels, and was just like, I can't believe they're here. This is the first time anyone in my community is going to see them, and I was really excited about that. And from that project, I was like, why can't other Indigenous peoples experience this ability to protect themselves on their homelands? So we started to work with Secwepemc people and that were blocking another pipeline, because we've blocked many pipelines. There's 400,000 kilometers of pipeline in our community across Alberta, so-called Alberta. And so we stood in solidarity with Secwepemc peoples and built 2 projects that were blocking a major pipeline that the Canadian government built and has spent over $30 billion on of tax-paying money. And they were blocking that. And then we stood in solidarity with Gidendam, with Wet'suwet'en peoples, who were also blocking a fracked gas pipeline. And because our communities are so remote, you need communications. And so it was able to power their communications when a lot of times it's really unsafe because they're being brutalized by the police and arrested. And so, and other types of projects we've done was solarizing a language revitalization camp, but also healing camps, so healing lodges. And so we've worked with the Onaman Collective in the Anishinaabe, out on the other side of so-called Canada in Anishinaabe territory, solarizing language and revitalization studio, because of a lot of our Indigenous languages are going extinct. Most of them, we have 600 communities across the country. Only 3 Indigenous communities languages will be set to survive from the 100 years of colonialism and impact of residential schools. And we also solarized another healing lodge, and Serena in the front row solarized her longhouse, which is a traditional Indigenous governance longhouse, which is from the Cayuga Nation, Haudenosaunee peoples. So we're really trying to build Indigenous governance, healing justice, and safety for our people that are being criminalized. So we have a whole host of reasons of why we solarize, and also not just to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but to bring about justice for all people. And that's the point of, from my opinion, if we're just going to perpetuate the same systems of harm of the fossil fuel industry in the renewable energy era, then we're no better off. And so I'm really happy we're here together talking about those things, because we have to stand in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Especially we have mining in the Congo, but also even in so-called Canada, in Nevada, of silica and different types of critical minerals. So I'm really happy that we can talk about that to figure out really how we can make the transition just. Hi.
Thank you, Melina, for this powerful story. And well, now I will go to Alice from Fiji, Pacific Islands. And I was hearing your introduction, right? And you telling how people from outside see the Pacific Islanders as fragile, or oh, these guys, and how this really was something that helped you all to step up and create this incredible movement of the Pacific leaders. So I would like for you to tell us a bit how the just energy transition can continue to empower the Pacific Islanders, and if you could also give some examples of what's already happening in Fiji or in a different part of the Pacific.
Thank you, Ilan. I want to start with painting a picture of our energy story, I would say, from Fiji. So in the 1960s, early 1970s, there was this noble idea to build a hydro dam to power our country. And this was on the main island. And so the government got assistance from international bodies to help finance it. They identified an area in the highlands of one of our provinces. The province is Naitasiri, and the area was called Monasabu. And so they went there and they built a dam, a hydro dam, to power the entire, that main island. And it was successful. Went on for decades. The company, our energy company, is 100% government owned. And they were trying to figure out also how to do this in other places. Over the years, we have had windmills put up in some mountainous areas, also in my province on the other island. We had a biogas company set up to get wood chips and wood and to make into biogas. And by 2016, we had an Energy Act that had some future goals of having over 90% of our energy be renewable energy by 2035. All good news, right? Amazing. But you're all looking at me waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? No one's convinced in this room. You're the real activists. So what happened in the 1970s when they identified this area to build the dam was there was little to almost no consultations with the communities there. I'm sure most of you might be familiar with how a hydro dam is created. They closed off an area and they flooded it with water to build this dam. There were 7 communities that were displaced because of the hydro dam. 4 had to be completely relocated. To this day, they're still seeking justice, compensation, reparations for the loss of their sacred lands, their fishing grounds, their burial sites. There was also the loss of biodiversity. It was a very rich biodiverse area. And funnily enough, for the longest time after the hydro dam was built, the immediate communities around the area did not have access to electricity. That was us in the 1970s to the 1980s. The company grew. They thought we were way ahead of the curve. Yeah, renewable energy, wind, solar. We're an island country. We have so much sun, sand, and wind. They built these windmills. We had them on the hills of my village at the top. They were so loud, no one could get any peace. We managed to collect energy, but the storage and distribution was not yet thought of through properly. I mentioned a biogas company that was built. Wonderful, but they quickly ran out of resources to burn to get energy. And these were all national projects using taxpayer funds to build these infrastructure and systems that ultimately did not work for our communities. And I mentioned an act, right? Oh yeah, you have an act. You want to move to renewable energy. However, the authority to have offline grid systems for renewable energy lies with the company and the corresponding ministry. And do you really think they have it in their interest for communities to be completely off-grid and independent in their solar and energy power systems? Just based on your experience, yes or no? And so that is where our fight has led us. We've come down to this path, and there are shared stories of struggles with this across the Pacific. In Tonga, similarly, they have their solar grid systems funded, paid for, built, but the technology to store the solar energy was not really thought through and distributing it. So it's not used in its full capacity. We still have smaller islands, atoll nations that 100% rely on fossil fuels. and the land mass is not enough to build these systems at this scale. The transportation, even if we're just thinking about burning of fuel, shipping is still a major issue. And so these are all the different things that we think about in this, just energy transition process. And one of the things we had shared about was there are solutions and there are better ways we can work. But for us, one of our experiences too in the Pacific is that we are a dumping ground for outdated technology. Once everyone else is done with this form of technology, it finds its way to us. And then we are left with a system that no longer works well or functions well. And so for us, the just transition is we want to be able to also be on par with the solutions out there and not have the outdated solutions or solutions that don't work come to us. We want to be able to have that conversation, to be in the room, to make those decisions as well at a global scale. But for us in our countries as well, to be able to figure out how we can create these community grid systems, and there's a lot of different components that we have to work through to be able to do that. But I hope at least I have painted a picture for you on where we are at. And then just to add a layer on top of that, climate change, warmer oceans, more frequent cyclones in the Pacific, we are constantly in a state of rebuilding. So when you think about solar technology, renewable energy technology, there's a fragility to the systems, the infrastructure that's built. So how can it be resilient in itself? Because that is also an excuse used by the companies, because it's like more sturdy to stick to fossil fuels. And we're still figuring out the steps to take. And I'm encouraged from hearing about how you are engaging nationally, internationally, as well as in your communities of how to do this. Because although we have noble ideas of how we want to do it, we have not figured out the just part of doing this work, doing it with communities. And I hope through this learning, my Pacific Island brothers and sisters will also be able to pick up on a few things that we can take back and help us to mobilize collectively from the Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Well, now we are going from the beautiful sea level islands from the Pacific to some of the highest parts of our planet, to the mountains of the Himalayas, Nepal. And Babita, I would like for you to tell us a bit about the work that PowerShift Nepal is doing with decentralized renewable energy, and how this is engaging indigenous leadership, women in all of this process.
Okay. Since PowerShift Nepal is nationally registered organization, so we have limitations of working with the community. So what we did is we formed a membership with the community-based organizations from the grassroots, and we formed a national network with them, and we tries to capacity build them on energy justice, climate justice, and gender justice. And we try to figure out their issues, their own issues, and what the challenges they are facing out. So in this, while we are talking about the decentralized, PowerShift Nepal is right now looking for the decentralizations of decentralizations of um, community-owned sustainable mobility towards transportations. So as Nepal is considering, and Nepal is in the first positions of air pollutions due to the emissions that is happening from the transportation. So Parsif Nepal is implementing the Parsif Shift Energy project, which focuses on the sustainable energy transitioning to create a safe and secure city for the just transitioning through the transportation medium, where we focus the public vehicles, electric scooters, cars, and also the buses. So this means that this is to promote the just energy transitioning, not only for moving towards not only moving towards the technology, but also creating the safer place, a safer environment by advocating for just transitioning. So yeah, Parsif Nepal is doing that, and in the grassroots level, Parsif Nepal is planning to work with the mountain communities who don't have we have difficulties bringing water in their houses, and many mountain country in Nepal who don't have the electricity capacities, though they rely on rivers, forests, and other sources, but they are still facing the historical marginalizations, though energy is crucially important for them. So they are still collecting firewoods for cooking, and which will lead to the indoor air pollutions. So yeah, Parsif is planning to do that.
Thank you, Babita. Well, I believe we have time for a last round of questions to our panelists. I will just ask for you to be a bit faster now, so we can hear from all of you. Maria, então, começando com você, você nos contou, né, uma história incrível aí da sua comunidade, como isso inspirou também outras comunidades já na Amazônia a fazerem um caminho semelhante. Mas eu queria que você falasse um pouco como que foi a curva de aprendizado para a tua comunidade, para essas comunidades, esse processo de vir uma tecnologia nova, como foi o treinamento, adaptação, aprendizados, porque muitas vezes, né, a gente escutou aqui, né, a Melina falando, por exemplo, as pessoas nunca tinham visto um painel solar, uma tecnologia nova, então queria que você comentasse um pouco como que foi esse processo, algum aprendizado, dificuldades que vocês tiveram no início.
O primeiro ponto que eu gostaria de destacar, que eu acho super importante, é a autonomia que a gente queria desse projeto. Tipo, nós queríamos ser os donos do nosso projeto. O que a gente entende? Muitas empresas ou organizações poderiam fomentar o projeto e articular com a comunidade. Só que o que acontece? Às vezes, a gente, como ribeirinho, extrativista, sente que as grandes empresas chegam para nos tornar empregados. Acabam trazendo um mini projeto, jogam um dinheirinho lá, articulam uma ação social e se empodera dizendo que eu fiz uma boa ação com aquela comunidade, com aquele território. Só que, na prática, a gente está sendo explorado dentro do nosso próprio recurso, dentro da nossa própria cultura, enriquecendo os maiores. E a gente não queria que esse projeto se tornasse isso. E aí a gente buscou ter a autonomia dele. É uma coisa nossa, foi uma coisa que a comunidade conquistou a partir dos seus trabalhos, a partir da sua rotina, a partir da sua vivência cultural. Então, partindo desse ponto, um dos maiores gargalos que a gente teve foi conseguir os equipamentos, no sentido de que as baterias que suportam esse sistema não são compradas diretamente no Brasil. Então, esse projeto todo, ele custou R$600 mil. Foi uma dificuldade para a gente no sentido de logística, de articulação de pessoas, de quem a gente poderia contar, solicitar para estar apoiando a gente no desenvolvimento de tudo isso, né? Grandes lideranças comunitárias de dentro do território que fizeram parte dessa ação. E quando chegou na comunidade o sistema, primeira noite, eu até me emociono em falar, primeira noite que a gente não ouviu o barulho do motor gerador e que olhava para dentro de casa e via a lâmpada acesa, a gente ficava, o que está acontecendo? Está só os grilos falando agora? Aquela barulheira que a gente ouvia do gerador rodando para a gente ter energia às 3 horas, a gente deixou de ouvir. E isso causou assim, caraca, e agora? O que a gente vai fazer? Sabe quando você está acostumado a uma vida, né? Tipo, eu tenho 31 anos, desde a minha infância que eu escutava o barulho do gerador para a gente conseguir ter energia, partindo da lamparina, que a gente chama, né? Que é a poronga, uma luz acesa, que era como se fosse a vela, a energia que a gente tinha um tempo atrás, né? Meu pai é seringueiro, extrativista, corta seringa até hoje, produtor de borracha, um dos maiores produtores da minha comunidade. E a luz que a gente tinha na época era a poronga do meu pai, que focava na casa toda para comer, para tomar banho, que precisava ir lá na beira, lá no rio. E a partir do momento que a gente começou a ter energia, sem aquela barulheira toda, olhar para casa, ter a luz acesa para jantar, reunir a família, foi um momento assim de tipo, a gente conseguiu um passo grande, a gente conseguiu uma conquista valiosa. E a dificuldade que a gente tem ainda agora é para a sustentação desse sistema. Tenha cuidado, preciso, tem que ter um cuidado. O rapaz que cuida de todo o sistema precisa estar atento para desligar na hora certa, porque se descarregar as baterias no zero, a gente vai precisar trocar uma bateria dessa e a gente não tem dinheiro para trocar no momento. A ideia é que a gente consiga, através de até mesmo da cadeia produtiva do Pirarucu e de parcerias, comprar mais uma bateria que aí sustentaria o nosso sistema 24 horas de energia. Por enquanto, a gente só consegue 18, mas, cara, já é um avanço enorme. Você conseguir conservar alimentos, você conseguir estudar. E quando essa energia 18 horas chegou, a gente teve duas preocupações de imediato. O uso da conectividade, que também chegou junto, como que a gente ia adaptar aquilo à nossa cultura sem perder a nossa essência, porque a juventude, quando chegou a conectividade junto com a energia, a televisão direto e todas aquelas informações, a gente se preocupou no sentido de como que a gente vai lidar com esse mundo novo dentro da nossa comunidade agora? Para onde essa juventude pode caminhar? Né? Quais são as coisas que podem embelezar a mente dessa galera e ela possa se retirar daqui, sair, migrar, né? Se apaixonar por um mundo exterior e ir embora? Como que a gente pensou como que a gente vai conservar a nossa cultura e ter qualidade de vida? Com energia 24 horas, com a internet. Então, esse foi um dos gargalos que, de imediato, a gente percebeu, né? A dificuldade de concentração até na escola, por conta do uso do telefone, é uma coisa nova, uma ferramenta nova, então o pessoal estava direto, assim, apaixonado por aquele mundo de rede social, né? Os TikTokers chegaram avançando tudo. Então, foi uma grande preocupação nesse sentido, assim, mais social. Mas foi uma renovação, uma qualidade de vida que adentrou dentro da nossa comunidade. Só que fico triste de pensar, será que a gente vai passar a vida inteira lutando para ter soberania, garantia de direitos e qualidade de vida dentro dessas comunidades, dentro desses territórios? E o povo, o mundo ainda vê a questão das mudanças climáticas para o futuro. As mudanças climáticas é um problema emergente do nosso presente. E a gente, como ativista, as pessoas verem a gente como uma esperança. contra todos esses sistemas, contra todos esses gargalos. A gente se coloca nesse lugar, eu me coloco no lugar de ser esperança da minha comunidade, das pessoas que acreditam em mim, das pessoas que se sentem representadas quando a gente está nesses espaços deliberativos de tomadas de decisões. Então, quais são as estratégias e as garantias que a gente pode ter para agir, né, contra todo esse sistema que burocratiza muito o empoderamento social dos nossos territórios? Não existe resultado promissor de projeto nenhum para qualquer estado, para qualquer comunidade, para qualquer território, se não chamar os territórios para a conversa. A gente, como parte do território, precisa fazer parte das pautas, precisa deliberar, precisa botar as nossas iniciativas. Os maiores chegam nas nossas comunidades, nos nossos territórios, e jogam uma proposta e querem que a gente aceite, porque entendem que a gente é minoria e não tem argumentos de defesa. Só que a gente precisa ter voz, quando eu falo que a gente precisa ter voz, no sentido de fazer as pessoas entenderem que nada é feito sem a nossa fala. Eles precisam ouvir quem vive dentro desses espaços para construir estratégias promissoras. Eu sempre falo isso quando eu olho para a Amazônia. As pessoas sempre falam de projetos e de iniciativas para conservar a biodiversidade amazônica. Mas enquanto eles não ouvirem e não chamarem os povos tradicionais, as comunidades, aqueles que vivem nas pontas, nas bases, para o diálogo e para a construção coletiva, não vai existir um resultado promissor para cuidar da Amazônia. Só quem sabe os cuidados que a Amazônia precisa é quem sofre as maiores consequências das mudanças climáticas e é quem mais trabalha para manter a floresta em pé, que são as comunidades, os povos e os territórios. E eu preciso enfatizar novamente, ouçam os territórios, chame os territórios para a conversa, para que a gente consiga resultados promissores para o cuidado do planeta e para a justiça climática que a gente tanto espera.
Obrigado, Maria. Thank you. Well, now we'll go to Irene again. And Irene, I want to know what's next for you, for the organization that you're leading in the East African region with this terrible threat of this oil pipeline, and at the same time, you're trying to build a just energy transition in the same area. So what's coming next? What's the next steps for you in your work?
Thank you so much. What next for my organization and Uganda and Tanzania at large is that we are still pushing for the Stop EACOP campaign because of the challenges that communities are actually facing. And in my country, what we call a just energy transition is literally not a just energy, because we've seen, for example, when we talk about electricity, which we refer as a renewable energy, it is not just in my community because it is not equitable, it is not inclusive. Grassroots communities cannot actually access the electricity that we are talking to be a just energy transition. So it's not yet just, in that line. And what we are trying to do is we are still gathering or creating networks in solidarity with other countries that are facing the same challenges or that are facing the same grievances or injustices or are having these fossil fuels, to gather the energy together to change the narrative that we still need a just energy transition that is equitable, that is just, that is inclusive for even that person at a grassroots to be able to receive or to access clean energy for all. And thing is that we believe in the power of the community. We believe that when community speaks, they speak volumes. We believe that when community speak, we speak with solutions and actions. So what do I mean in this line is we need more communities to come up to join our campaigns, which we have really formulated. And from now is that we have registered one achievement through the power of collaboration that the East African crude oil pipeline was supposed to start this year, but it has been postponed because most of the financial institutions decided to withdraw from supporting the pipeline. So that is an achievement for us as community organizers. Yes. However, just of recent last month, we've seen other financial institutions coming to support, but we are still calling upon all financial institutions to stop funding the East African crude oil pipeline, but rather to fund the green economic alternatives that are inclusive, equitable, and just for the marginalized communities at grassroots level. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Irene. Well, we will have to do some magic here with the time. Just show some cards with the time. But yeah, let's keep going for a bit more. Melina, I heard you telling all of these stories as well about how your community, the organization you started, was able to transform some of the areas, the territories, and with solar energy. So I would like to ask if you, given all of this experience, if you have any key lessons learned, things that you can share here that can help other communities in other parts of the world to do something similar, or, I mean, through their own context.
Well, actually, just this past year, we released a Just Transition Guide. And it's a Just Transition Guide that's from an Indigenous perspective, and it's Indigenous-led pathways for solutions in climate resiliency in the climate crisis. And you can actually download it on our website. We just made it available to anyone that wanted to use it. It's from 10 years of research. It started with my master's thesis and then also filming a TV show. I was privileged to film a TV show across Turtle Island, so-called Canada, where I went to 26 locations and visited Indigenous communities all across, we say Turtle Island, so-called Canada, and I was able to visit communities that had implemented the solutions themselves. Like we've heard, if it's a foreign imposition, if it's imposed by other people, oftentimes the communities know what the problems are, and so we know what the solutions are. So that's the types of project that we profiled. And the thing that I see that is so upsetting about present day, even in social media, but of course mainstream media, is that we don't see the solutions that are actually there. And so we wanted to uplift those different projects across the country. And so we have 13 episodes, and it airs on 3 different networks in so-called Canada, a network in Australia, one in the US. And we put that into the Just Transition Guide. And we wanted to be able to say, these are stories, these are solutions that communities have been able to implement. And just like Alicia was saying, with the mega dams and with the biomass and with all of the different types of quote unquote green energy, renewable energy in the Just Transition Guide, we differentiate between what we see as Indigenous peoples of what is just. And so mega dams don't make the list. Nuclear doesn't make the list. Large scale biomass does not make the list. So we differentiate between medicine, for us is like the dosage, right? So the medicine gives us our medicines give us the ability to heal, or they also harm. If you take too much cedar or sage, like you drink too much, if you're trying to cleanse yourself or have a bath, like if you do too much, it can really hurt you. And so with renewable energy, I see it as something similar to that, where small scale is a really achievable thing. It's affordable for our communities. It's inclusive. It's equitable. And so we look at that kind of array, and so we go through technology. So we'll share more about it in the workshop tomorrow, but you can go on our website and download it, and it just gives people the ability to kind of see what projects are happening and just uplifting those actual community stories. And so there's about 8 chapters. It's 180 pages, so there's a lot of information that, and it has the context of in colonialism, neo-colonialism, imperialism, all of the isms in the racism, environmental racism that we see. And so have it in that context of, because we see a lot of non-Indigenous resources out there that don't have that lens. And so we really wanted to provide people, Indigenous peoples, to have that ability to see themselves in a guide like that. So hi, thank you.
Thank you, Melina, and for sharing about this great resource to all of us. I will go now to Alice. And Alice, I heard you speaking about many examples in your region about how the transition was not just at all, or how the energy systems that were developed didn't attend the communities. So I wanted to hear from you in the view of the Pacific Islanders, the indigenous people, what a just transition would look like in your opinion.
Thank you, Ilan. And I understand the time crunch. I wanted to, as final remarks, we are the choir, right? And we're the ones who will sing our song to the world. And if I could offer a verse for this choir, is that for us in the Pacific, this just transition, we understand going 100% renewable will not put a dent in the carbon emissions globally. Our work to move towards renewable energy is because we recognize how it is accessible for our communities. The dam I talked about only serves one island. We have over 330 islands. And so when we see that there are forms of energy that are off-grid, that can be built to serve a community and improve their way of living, that's what we want for our communities. But the fight to stop the tar sand mines, to stop new fossil fuel mines from being opened up, that still remains. Because the scale at which we do things will not change that. But we recognize that it is an important step to take. And we also want to share that, we are the barometer of the world. When you don't see our colorful dresses anymore, when you don't see our smiles, you don't hear our songs, because we are no longer here, the world will be in real trouble. And so just for one is for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. We go now to Babita for some final remarks from you. And I would like to ask you how can we achieve energy justice through the work with local communities?
So I believe, since I was talking about the sustainable mobility, urban mobility, right? So I believe that shifting towards the shifting and only the changing the technology is not sufficient, but the people does. That's why I feel. So if we want to have a solution towards the energy, it should be the people who can change, because when the people have the power and the communities and the solutions is governed by the communities, and if there is a democratic participations, then of course there should be the justice, I believe. And Yeah, and when we are talking about the transitioning towards the renewable energy, but it should be focused that marginalized communities and all the communities that are very vulnerable should be focused, because they are the one who are facing the greatest challenge, and they are bearing they are bearing the cost, that they are bearing the cost more than they have created. So I believe I believe there should be the affordable, clean, and renewable energy, which is distributed in fair, affordable, and it is distributed according to the capacity, according to the capacity of the people. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, before closing this amazing panel and giving a very, very, very loud claps to our participants, I would like to, we heard amazing stories, we heard what we can do, we heard how should we continue the work, and I want to just invite you all for a call to action that we have. An opportunity this year. As many of you know, we have a COP30 happening in Brazil. And 3 days ago, we were in the indigenous camp, and we had a letter that many of the organizations here signed this letter. This letter had three very clear demands. The first one is to triple renewable energy capacity with justice. The second demand is a clear pathway for a global fossil fuel phase out. And the third demand was for indigenous people to be the co-leads of COP30. We delivered this letter 3 days ago. This letter was delivered by indigenous people from Canada. Melina was one to deliver. Also, our partners from Koyab, Alana was the other one, and Vinzila from Papua New Guinea is there from the Pacific. The three of them delivered this letter to the COP presidency, the ambassador Andrea do Lago. And now we have an amazing opportunity to build that pressure until COP30. So I invite you to, well, I saw many phones up, so I believe you're already scanning, and we would like to invite really you to sign the letter, to share the letter with your networks, and for us really to hold the COP30 presidency accountable to these very important demands. So that's our call to action. And now please, very loud claps to our amazing panelists so we can end this panel.
Thank you so much to our incredible panel of all women panel, and of course to Elon for moderating that. I'm gonna swiftly move us to closing for lunch. But before we do go for lunch, I've just got one or two very important things for all of you to note. After lunch, we are going to have.
Thank you, everyone. This was the end of our panel. Thank you very much to our Zoom and YouTube audience for watching. I hope this panel moved you as it did me, hearing all the powerful stories of the communities that are resisting fossil fuel projects and the so-called solutions guised as renewable energy projects, which are harming communities. Right before we leave, a quick call to action as well from our side. Do sign the letter that Ilan shared with you right at the panel moments ago. But another thing we're doing in addition is that we're also calling on Brazil and its government, especially as they're hosting the climate talks COP30, to step up at this crucial moment and ensure that our indigenous peoples and their communities have real and meaningful co-leadership in shaping the climate talks and COP30, which means that they bring in real action and not just fake promises. So if you believe in a future powered by renewables, in climate justice, and in indigenous leadership at COP30, do add your name to our call and the petition to support indigenous leaders in Brazil. You should see the link in the chat in your languages. Please do support us and please join the energy revolution. And remember, right before we leave, we have 4 more powerful panels throughout the week running from Monday to Thursday. So be sure to stay with us, join us at around the same time on this link every day until Thursday so that we can continue exploring what a just energy transition looks like from different perspectives. Tomorrow, our panel will be on the power and movement from warriors to world builders, where your live stream host will be Isabel, a climate justice advisor from Oxfam Novik. Don't miss out at all, as we will be joined by global climate change makers who will share how people power has shaped history. So I'm very excited. See you tomorrow. Have a great Sunday. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Bye, everyone.
Obrigada. Merci, gracias, and bye-bye.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Day. I'm very excited for tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Bye.